Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Welcome to the next CFJ Coaching Success School live show. Welcome to the show today. We got lots going on here. We're going to be talking very soon. I'm just getting on here a little bit early to talk about professional coaching and leadership and enrollment. And today I'm excited because we're going to talk about something I love, which is new. I haven't really shared it before, which is the ask to tell ratio. Which is super fun. And I've already had lots of people write to me and say, "What is that? What are you talking about? I have no idea what you mean," which is kind of fun, right? Like I get to share something brand new. Hey, Jennifer, glad you're here, about something you can look at in your own coaching work and see if it makes sense to you, see if it's helpful. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. That'll be fun too. Hey, Nuria, glad you're here. So, welcome to another CFJ Coaching Success School live show. I do these every so often. I do sometimes just one, sometimes I'll do a whole series. There is one more left in this series. So, there's today and there is next Wednesday. And next Wednesday, there is going to be a special guest who I will announce shortly, but I'm excited to have him. So, it'll be two of us next week, not just me. And I'm glad you're here. So today we have a little less than 90 minutes now to talk about leadership and enrollment. And specifically, I'm going to share a little bit about this ask to tell ratio. So the way the show works, so you can comment, you can ask questions, I will stay on them, we will look at them together. You are welcome to ask questions. My request is that we keep them in the territory of coaching, obviously, professional coaching, ideally enrollment questions, situations that you're in, and if it leans a little bit into coaching, like a challenge with a client that relates to enrollment, we can do that too. I've been a professional coach for over 15 years. There is the CFJ Coaching Success School, which runs once a year, January to June. We already have some people here today who are in the new school, the 2022. Nuria is a new coaching student in the school. So she's coming to the show as well because she's not messing around. She's like, I'm making it happen this year. So good for you, Nuria, for being here. So let's slow down and talk about leadership and enrollment. And then I'm going to start getting into this new idea, this ask to tell ratio. Leadership and enrollment. Last week, we had a lot of questions about the nuance of this, right? Like, how much am I leading? How much am I partnering with someone when I'm in enrollment? And it's a little it is nuanced, so this is not a set of rules. That's the most important thing I can say. And the people who are in the school already know I say this all the time. They'll ask a question and I'll say, so sounds like you might be looking for a rule. There are no rules. There are some guidelines that I share, and there are lots of times you might do none of them because it doesn't make sense based on the situation. So hey Kyle, glad you're here. So enrollment and leadership in enrollment is, to me, one of my most favorite topics, because when we're in social self, when we're in people pleasing, when we're in all of those kinds of behaviors, which occur, especially when we're a new coach, that can really diminish our ability to lead effectively, particularly when our intention is to enroll clients into our business and serve people and to make money. Because when we're in people pleasing, we tend to not be focused on creating a really clear container for someone in an enrollment conversation. And when we're in people pleasing and when we're in role reversal, then they're the ones kind of in charge, and everything gets really wobbly and wonky. And most of the time, actual enrollment will not occur. So Arza Goldstein, welcome. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here. Another student from the school who is doing a big event this Sunday. So I am guessing she might be here because she's like, hey, I want to do a great job at my event. So Arza is doing a very special event for a handful of people, if I'm remembering accurately. I want to say she's limited it to 12 or 15, and it's an event on looking at perfection and how we might let go of that in our lives in service to a different life experience. That's not her exact title. Her exact title is way better, but it's, I think she limited it to all women. And her intention is she's filling a group after that, a group that will use Brene Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfection. So, Arza, if you have questions that you're thinking about in this context, feel free to post them. Hey, Zach. So, all right, it's 12:05. I think we've let enough time pass that I can talk about the ask to tell ratio, which is a fun thing that I'm playing with. Now, some of you may know that I also do work in corporate environments as a professional coach and facilitator. And some of the work I do is with the Alchemy Group, which is a fabulous company that I coach the owners of. And it is one of the few, really the only organization that I, by choice, will facilitate their content within corporations. So they have a piece of their content where they talk with leaders about their ask to tell ratio. Now, in their context, they're inviting leaders to look at how much are you telling and how much does that impact people being inspired by you as a leader, right? In leadership, in corporate, ask to tell is a really important question because most leaders often are not asking anything. They're just telling. But Sandy, you're going to like what I do with this. I'm going to reverse this in this context, okay? So in the alchemy world with leaders, right, it's like, how much are you telling versus asking or listening, right? Managing is about telling, leading is about inspiring. All true, even in the context of coaching. However, in enrollment, coaches will often start deferring to the client, and they will be in ask mode versus tell mode. And in this context, telling is actually a more effective thing to be doing as a leader in the context of enrollment as a coach. And I'm going to explain what I mean because everybody's going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. This makes no sense, Carolyn. So I'm going to see if I can do this again with you. So for leaders inside of organizations, the ask to tell ratio is really about how much am I asking questions, how much am I asking someone where they're at, and that's important, right? Many leaders are not asking very much of anything. In the context of enrollment, your ask to tell ratio has a definite impact on your ability to enroll. So I'm going to give you an example, and then I'm going to go to Kyle's question. So an example of this might be, let's say you're at the end of a conversation with someone and they say to you, hey, it's a great day. I want to work with you. How do I do this? How do I do this? And you're a little surprised. You're a little like taken aback. Maybe you haven't rehearsed as much as you would like how to say what you're going to do when someone says they want to work with you. Maybe you're just caught off guard. It's a bad day and you're caught off guard. And you say, so you want to work with me? And they go, yeah, no, I want to work with you. How do we do this? And you say, okay, well, let me get my calendar out. Let's look at dates. Like, let's set up a launch session. How is this date for you? Would that work? Or what about that date? Now, that's me asking, okay? Now, this is really nuanced and it's really subtle. But it's like when we're at the end of a conversation and someone says, I want to do this, I'm clear. And you go, okay, let's pull out our calendars and schedule your launch session. Now, I might say to someone, well, how is October 8th at 2 o'clock? Versus, here's my whole calendar. How would this be? Or is that not good for you? Is this better? Or would you prefer we do a little bit later? So that's a lot of asking. And you may think, well, that's ridiculous, Carolyn. I wouldn't do that. You might not, but there are coaches, maybe even some that are here or somebody watching this later, the recording, and goes, oh, wow, I kind of do hand over everything to the person. I'm going to give you another example that just recently came up in the school. Somebody was working out payment with a client, a new client, and they said, okay, so here's the fee. How does this sound to you? So they said in the conversation, well, how does this sound? That's not when we want to be asking. That's when we want to remove these incredible skills we have as coaches, which are to ask deep questions and to listen generously. We want, at the end of the conversation, for the most part, for those incredible skills to go away. And we want to be leading the conversation, which means less asking, more telling, especially when someone is like, I'm good, let's go do this. So when someone says, I'm good, you say, okay, my fee is $5,000 for 6 months. We don't ever want the next words to be, is that okay for you? We do not want asking at that moment. We are telling. This is where we want our tell ratio to be high at the end of a conversation. Now that applies even if someone is not saying, hey, I want to work with you. Right? Because sometimes that doesn't happen, even for me, not even, and for me. So someone might be like, great. So, and you say, well, are you complete? Are we complete today? And they say, yeah, I'm complete. That is not where we would say, are you sure? Because that's more asking. If someone says they're complete, we are going to take them at their word. And what does that mean? They'll go, great, you're complete. Excellent. Do you have any questions left over from today that we didn't get to? Nope, I'm good. Great. It was a pleasure to get to spend time with you, to serve you. If there's ever anything I can do to assist you, please reach out. Just send me an email. And thank you so much. It was great to spend time with you and to hear about your life. And that's it. That's what we do. I'm going to talk more about the ask to tell ratio. There's other places this shows up. Where coaches are way in ask mode and really they want to be in tell mode. So we're going to do a question from Kyle. In an enrollment conversation recently, for the first time, a PC said, well, that will be $250 an hour, $500 a session. I mostly just listened. I didn't respond much. How could I been in better leadership service when that comes up? So Kyle, I'm going to ask a question to your question. Were they like making a statement like your fee is $250 an hour or $500 a session and there was some like comment there? Was that like a statement on your fee or was that just a clarifying question? I think it's fine what you did, right? Like someone says to me, so your fee, I've had people say, so your fee works out to X an hour. And if they're really good at math, they can do it really fast. I can't do it really that fast. So I go, yeah, it is. I have had people look at me incredulously. They were saying your fee was high. Did they actually say your fee's really high or was that just inferred based on the shock in their face? They were skeptical. Okay. So one of the things that you can do when someone decides they're going to take your fee and break it into an hourly rate, and that's what they're doing, by the way, right? They're like taking your fee and they're going, that means you're $500 an hour? That is, how do you justify that? They may not ask that, but their eyes are asking that, right? So this is a great one. Kyle, it's really fine not to address it at all. It can be like, yep. Now, I've had people say, wow, that's a lot of money. And there's a couple answers. My answer is for some. And that can be helpful, right? Because really expensive is in the eye of the beholder, right? Another thing you can say is, well, I really hear you. I completely hear you. And this was something I used to say, and Kyle, this might be helpful if someone's being super direct about your fee and claiming it's expensive. It's okay to say for some it is. You can say, now, it's such a great thing you're pointing out. So what would need to occur that would make that fee worth it to you? Like, what would have to happen in your life? Like, what would you have to be willing to take on that spending that kind of money, making that kind of investment would be the best money you ever spent? So I want to gently say, yeah, it is to you. I could totally get how that could be a high fee. Sometimes I say when people work with me, the stakes are high. You know, often they're wanting to heal a very deep, wounded relationship with an adult child who they don't have a relationship with anymore. Or they're starting a business and this means everything to them. So the stakes are high. Now, another way to say this, I'm going to give you lots of options, everybody, is when someone's like, wow, that's expensive. And you go, to some it is. You say, look, you know, you would have to decide the stakes need to be high for you to do this. This has to be worth it to you. So you need to be like, what would I need to make happen for that kind of investment to be worthwhile? And you may be like, nothing. I remember having a conversation with my brother about Steve Hardison's fee, which is it's higher now, but it was at the time $150,000 for 1 year. And that's no email in between. That's just sessions live. You go to him. And I said, he was like, that's ridiculous. And I said, not to everybody, because he's making a good living. And I said, you know, you'd have to decide what would make that worth it to you. He said, nothing. And I said, there you go. For some people, they're going to be like, there's nothing that would be worth that kind of investment to me. And you say, great. That's so good to know, right? And there are people who are like, for $5,000 to bring back my relationship with my child, if that happens, it's worth 5 times as much as that. So that's the context we want to be in, right? So we don't want to be put on the defensive if someone says, wow, that's a lot of money. We want to acknowledge, like, I really hear you. I can see for you that it could feel that way. That's not true for everyone, but yeah, I get it. I love that at some point they said, well, I can go to my massage therapist at a quarter of the price. And you could say, you could. See, if someone said that to me, I'd be like, you're absolutely right. You could go to your massage therapist for a quarter of the price. Here's my question, though. Does your massage therapist transform your life with you? They may make you feel good. Maybe for an hour, maybe for the day, maybe for a couple days, you feel the glow of that massage therapist. But is that getting at you creating your whole life the way you always wished it would be? And if it is, stick with your massage therapist. They're amazing. They're doing a lot more than just massage therapy, right? So, Kyle, could I say, regardless of who you might work with, what might need to happen? What would need to happen in your life to make that worth it? See, I don't even think you need that. See, I think you can take out regardless of who you work with. I think you could say, look, the question to ask is what would need to occur in your life to make that fee worth it? It doesn't matter whether you work with me, and there may be nobody, and there may be nothing that would make that worthwhile. There'd be no investment. I mean, that's up to you, Kyle. If that feels better, use regardless of who you might work with, because they may not work with anyone. It's not like most people are like, I'm going to go and find someone. I'm talking to 10 people. Most people are talking to you and maybe one other, if they're looking around at all. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Nuria, what about making it easy for them to enroll? I love that question. So I want you to, in the comments, say a little bit more about that, like what you mean by that, so that I can help you, because we do want to make it easy for people to enroll. We're not trying to make it an obstacle course to enrollment, right? And then I'm going to pose a question to all of you who are here. And if you're watching the recording, you can do this anyway. So one of the questions I'm going to ask you, I want you to take a minute or two while I'm talking and just review the last 1 or 2 conversations you've had, the last 1 or 2 enrollment conversations. And I want you to give yourself like ask to tell ratio. I want you to be like, what was my ask to tell ratio at the beginning and the end, right? Because in the middle is where coaching is occurring, right? That's where you're asking lots of questions and doing deep listening. But at the beginning, when you're establishing the context for the conversation, and at the end is really where you want to go. So and you can guess, it doesn't have to be exact, but you might go like, let me look at my ask to tell ratio. Let's take a look and just see if this is helpful or not. And if it's not helpful, there's lots of other things for us to talk about. But Nuria, I'm thinking about this question about making it easier and that what's making you ask that? Like, because I'm all for making it easy for someone to enroll, and I don't want to hand over leadership to them, right? Because when people feel like they're being led, that creates a sense of safety, it creates a sense of direction, it creates a sense of, I like safety and direction. People feel like they feel confident that the other person knows what they're doing versus a little like, oh God, what were we talking about again? You want to what? Oh no. And again, I'm exaggerating. No coach talks like that. No one that even, I'm exaggerating for the purposes of learning, okay? Being curious about how much time they are willing to commit or offering monthly payments. Okay, that's helpful, Nuria. And then I'm going to go to you, Lee. Good to see you. Nuria, see, I don't want to, how can I say this? I have the way people can work with me. So it's 6 months or a year. So I'm not asking people, well, how much time are you willing to commit? So Nuria, I don't want to give people that many options, and I don't want them to be the ones determining the length of the program. It doesn't mean I can't be a little bit flexible or make an exception, but I want them to know, so I'm going to pretend I'm you, Nuria. So people work with me 2 ways, 3 months or 6 months. If it's 3 months, we're meeting every other week for 75 minutes, and in between there's email coaching. You can reach out to me. We can get on a spot call if necessary. If you work with me for 6 months, it includes a half-day launch session. So it's 6 months, it includes a half-day launch session and then a half-day completion session at the end. So, and then in between, it's the same. So Nuria, what I'm imagining you're doing is you might be asking more about like, well, what were you thinking in terms of length of time? I mean, again, I'm making it up, but I don't ever, as the coach, want to be like, well, what were you thinking? What would work for you? That is called, we are handing the beach ball of leadership over to the other person, and they don't even know this job. They're like, I think 2 weeks would be great. Boing. And you're like, 2 weeks? I can't coach anyone effectively for 2 weeks. So we want, I don't want to ask what they're willing to commit. I want to give them 2 options, 3 months, 6 months, 6 months or a year. If I have a payment plan, then I might say it. So in other words, if I offer a payment plan, you have 2 options. You can pay in full and the fee is X. I also offer a payment plan and then the fee is Y and it's paid, 3 payments of this much. Okay? So again, you can reflect back to me. What do you hear in that when I'm telling how people work with me? What I hear, I hope you hear it too, is certainty. Do you hear certainty? You're not like, ooh, does she know she's going to let me choose? Does she have any idea why I'm talking to her? My life's a mess, and she thinks I'm going to choose the amount of time that we work together? If it was up to me, I would take a pill and we'd be done. So, Nuri, I want to see what you have to say to that. And then I'm going to go to Lee, and then Eric, I see your question. One was a 10. The more recent was a 5. The 10 signed up right on the post. The second was a colleague, and I waffled, and I'm chasing her. Isn't that great to see that? The distinction. So you were a 10 versus a 5. Now I assume you mean like you were a 10 in leading and telling at the key points lead. If I have your numbers wrong, let me know. But congratulations, you got a registration. Someone signed up to work with you. I love that. Let's go to Eric. Do you have any wisdom about how to handle re-enrollment conversations where the intent is to explore what re-enrollment would look like, but it goes kind of right into coaching like they're used to? At the end, they're like, of course I want to keep going, but it happens a little less squeaky clean than I mean. Is that okay? It's totally okay. So sometimes a client is really clear, like, hey, I want to, like, yeah, let's get coaching. Oh, I want to renew. Great. We don't want to make it hard or more formal for them. But I am going to share one of my favorite re-enrollment stories because I think it will be useful to you from a leadership perspective. And it's from my business, so not a student. So I had this client. He was a corporate executive. We'd never met in person. I was coaching him, long distance. And it was a lot of leadership coaching and life stuff. And I coached him for 6 months, and he was an Ironman. So he did Ironmans, like as his hobby, and for those of you who don't know, an Ironman's like a marathon plus a run and a swim, because a marathon just isn't enough for some people. And they have them all over the world. They're a big community of Ironman people who do that for fun, because that's what they think of as fun. And so he was an Ironman, and I loved him as a client, really fun client to coach. And I get on my coaching session with Steve Chandler, and I say, hey, blah, blah, blah is ready to renew, and here's what I'm thinking. And I say to him, so, he lives in Arizona, and I was thinking I could go out and see him for a half day for when we talk about re-enrollment. And I would just fly there. And at the other end of the phone, I'll use my coffee cup. It's very quiet. And I was like, hey, Steve, are you there? What's going on? He's like, you want to fly to him? And I said, yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. I haven't met him. He's very quiet. And he says, Carolyn, he's an Iron Man. He does not want things made easy for him. He wants things made harder. Who are you? Like, what are you doing? I've been coaching with Steve for a while. He goes, let me go. I'm going to have to go get the barf bag and vomit, because the way like you're doing this is like, what is this happening with you? I mean, I laughed so hard, and that's very unique to Steve and my coaching relationship, that when he would do that, I just would laugh and laugh. Like his jokes about me being mushy or role reversey or social self. But the funniest line, right? He's an Iron Man. He wants things to be harder. He comes to you. So Steve was like, he comes to you. So I was like, oh, so I tell him just to get, he goes, yes, this guy, what are you kidding me? So the next conversation, I was like, David, so here's what's going to happen. Your last session, you're going to come live. You're going to come live, and we're going to talk about whether or not it makes sense to continue. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You're going to come live, and we're going to meet here in my back office, and we're also going to go to my CrossFit gym and do a workout together, because he'd never CrossFitted before. And I thought, well, there was no way I was better than him. But I thought, oh, I'm going to have him do a workout, because that's like, he doesn't do those kind of workouts. I won't be better than him, but I could give him like a little run for his money. He was like, great. I want everyone to really hear this. He didn't even blink about the requirement to come live. I was like, the last session, I want you to come live. So fly out, get a flight, come for the afternoon. And then the hilarious part was he came. And the first part, I was like, we're great. Let's go. We're going to go to the gym. I take him to my gym, all ready for a workout. And I kept praying, please, no running in this workout. No running, because running, the guy does marathons as part of his Ironmans. And I'm not a fast runner. I wasn't going to say I'm a terrible runner, because that's not accurate. I'm a good runner. I'm just not fast. Hello, who cares if fast? That's like the thing. The workout was a deadlift workout, which he'd never done deadlifts. I do deadlifts. Hello, like lots. So the workout was a deadlift workout, and it was something he had never done before, which was super fun for him. And I got to kind of look like I knew what I was doing in the workout department, which was fun for me. And he came to my office and we sat together and he decided to re-enroll. So I share that story so that you can really hear, right? What do you hear in that? I want, versus me telling you, this is a learning opportunity. What do you hear in the story? Put it in the comments. I wanted to comment. Yes, so Lee, I got it right. Good. Thank you for telling me. I got that part right. I'm so happy. And good for you. I hear a lot of strengthening in that. And Eric, let me know if what I shared was helpful about like with someone's like, I'm ready to go. Fantastic. Like, okay, excellent. Let's get you re-enrolled. And then Nuria, yes, I hear this is what needs to occur if you want to create the changes that you want. I'm going to add to that. I'm going to take a sip. What I'm going to add to that is it's not just this is what needs to occur if you want to create the changes that you want. That's not real. Yes, it's that I'm the coach. I know what period of time creates the greatest likelihood of transformation. Now, if you're a brand new coach, you may have no idea. You may be like, I don't know. So then you just pick what you think works. I just copied Steve. I was like, he does 6 months. That's what I'm going to do. And we started with 3 months, Michelle and I. So I was like, 3 months. 3 months is what I do. 3 months and 6 months. I knew that me having a definitive amount of time versus making it waffly and letting them choose was always going to be better, right? But it's because, Nuria, we know, and you will know, you may already have a sense of like, well, I already know that 2 sessions just isn't enough. It just doesn't do anything. Exactly. So now you want to think about, well, if I don't really know, is 3 months where I want to start, right? Or some people do 12 sessions or whatever. It's like, but that you are the coach. That's why when I talked about last week, the client doesn't decide the amount of time because the client's not the one working knowing what it takes to create transformation, right? And coaches get to do whatever they want, right? So I certainly would not be someone who would say to a coach if they're like, I like doing 1-day intensives and that's all I'm going to offer. I'd be like, great. You just want to offer 1-day intensives and that's how you want to make your living? Fantastic. So it's not like, oh, it has to be over time, right? Someone might be like, I only want to do 1-week retreats. That's all I'm doing. Fantastic, right? It's like that you get to decide what works for you. But if you're going to do 1-day intensives and the client's like, but wait, I want to do a 1-day intensive and then I want to do 6 individual 1-hour sessions. If I'm creating my business the way I want, I say, I'm sorry, I don't do 6 individual sessions. I do 1-day intensives. That's how I created my work. That's where I like to do work with people. I think a lot can happen in a full day. I'm willing to do 3 1-day intensives with you that we do over 3 months. That's what I'm willing to do. So I share that as a way for people to see, well, what are my options and choices? So if you have a question, please throw it in the chat and I'm happy to answer it. And I'm going to go back to talking a little more about this ask to tell ratio. So we already had one person say on their last conversation, they were 2. They were a 10 in one, which is good scores, and a 5 in the other. And the 10 is where they got the enrollment. So I'm going to invite you to slow down and go, let me look at the ending. Let's just look at the endings right now of my last 2 enrollment conversations. What was my ask to tell ratio? Now, again, this is not magic, people. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, and they're like, I didn't tell enough and I didn't get a client. The way we get a client, besides really knowing how to enroll, is what happens in the conversation, right? The needle has to have moved inside of the person such that they're like, I want more of this. I need to be with this person more. I feel different when I'm with her. I feel different. I feel possibility. I feel hope. So I'm being told that I have glare. We don't want glare. That doesn't make for the best Facebook Live experience. So look, I'm being wild and crazy, moving my screen for you all so there's less glare. There you go. That's way better, people. All right. I love that you're all saying hi to each other, Deborah Workman and Jennifer Butler. I love that we're doing some social hellos, but let's get to some questions, people. I am here to serve you in your leadership and enrollment. So bring me a question from your last conversation. Here's another question. I have a question. I submitted a coaching proposal to my company, Mission Health. They thought the proposal was great, but said not yet. My coach suggested I start coaching 3 people, have them complete a before and after study to produce data. I have 1 signed on, like a regular client, but I'm struggling in leadership in the other 2 because it's complementary. Oh, 1 wants to do it while driving, the other cannot follow up. Okay, Lee, this is a great question. I love that you brought this forward. I love that you're doing that. It doesn't matter that it's complementary. And I'm going to share more about what that looks like. So let's say I'm doing what you're doing and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start coaching 3 people inside the organization, and 2 of them are going to be complementary. And 2 people say, I want to do that. I want to do that. And I go, great. So let's have a conversation. So Lee, when I'm in that conversation, I want to say, okay, so let me tell you the requirements to do this work with me. So the requirements are the conversations will occur in a private space. You will not be driving. You will not be on another device. We won't be like with me and then secretly texting. You're 100% focused in this conversation and you're here. So you're going to show up on time. It's really the agreements, Lee. Did you work through the agreements with them when these 2 people said, I want these 2 spots? Did you do it as if they were a paying client without the fee and say, okay, here's the agreements. Here are my requirements. I am guessing, question mark, the answer is no, but I don't know for sure. So I'm curious about that. And then I'm going to give you the agreements. Remember, I'm sharing this, Lee, when you were in the school, right? When someone becomes your client, you give them the agreements and you review them together before you launch into the first session. I see that your answer is no. So you've had 2 ECs, right? But it sounds like you're saying in the EC they're on the phone, or tell me these people are already in the engagement with you, right? The 2 complementary people. Or are you still in conversation with them becoming the 2 people who get this benefit? The person you said, the other can just not follow up. Do you mean that they're not showing up for the conversations? Give me a little more detail, okay? So I don't want to be answering the wrong questions or be totally off base on this, and I know you'll fill me in. I do want to say this though, what Lee is doing is really a great idea. So when someone is a new coach, or a newer coach, or you want to get into an organization. Lee's not a new coach, but she or she is saying, I want to do this work inside this organization. One of the things you can do with an individual or with inside of an organization, you could say, here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to coach 2 people here for 3 months each. I will do it complimentary, and let's just see how it goes. And at the end, you and I will talk about whether or not it makes sense for me to coach 6 more people for a fee. So I'll coach 2 people. It will be complimentary. It'll be for 3 months. They will get 6 sessions. Give me 2 people who you know will really take advantage of this opportunity. They will be required to show up on time. They will be required to play all in. I will be going over my requirements with them. They need to have a conversation with me before I say yes to taking them on. And let's you and I have an agreement. At the end of the time, at the end of the 3 months, we will have a conversation. You will talk with them. And if it makes sense, then we'll proceed with the full program. So that's an idea. that you could do. Now you may be saying, but Carolyn, why would I do that for no money? Because if you have no clients yet or have very little, what else are you going to do with your time? Because as a coach, our number one job is to be coaching, right? So coaching is a great thing to do, especially when we don't have a lot of clients yet. There's all sorts of ways to do this, right? To get practice. So a number of coaches in my school who only had like 2 paying clients and maybe the fees were low, we talked about like, why don't you offer pro bono coaching to 2 or 3 people? Say, I'm just growing my business. I'm opening up 3 spots. It's going to be pro bono. It's going to be 6 sessions or 4 sessions. And I'm willing to have a conversation with you. I see what you're up to in the world. Would you like to do this with me? Most of the time, people say, oh my God, yeah. But what happens for most coaches is they don't lead. They it gets waffly because they're not paying. They don't treat the person exactly the same. Saying, now, I want to be clear. Requirements are you show up on time, you don't miss sessions, and you're not in a car. You're not driving, none of that. Let me go back to Lee. I've had 2 ECs with each of the 3, just finalizing. I was just kidding about the agreements. Now, Lee, with the people, you can say to them in the last session, so are you wanting to take one of these complimentary spots? Is that still something you want to do? And they go, yeah, that's something. So let me share the requirements, because I'm going to say right now, given that you were late or given that you're in your car, that won't work if we're going to work together. If I'm going to coach you for 3 months, there needs to be absolute no moving vehicles. You need to be in a private space where you can focus. You need to show up on time. You can't miss sessions. Those are the requirements for this time. If you cannot keep those as you will do them, we can't proceed. See, when we're going to offer a pro bono arrangement, we want to make the agreements even stronger. Like, these are requirements. Now, what's interesting, right, is I just went from agreements, which is like, do you agree to these, which is an ask, to a requirement, which is a tell. That's a tell. So if we're going to create a pro bono opportunity or a few of those to get practice, we want to be more in strengthening the agreements into requirements, because otherwise the person has no skin in the game. So Lee, tell me if you heard that clearly or if you have questions. Kyle, how should I answer when people ask me the following in an EC? Can we do a hybrid program of some sessions coaching over Zoom and some sessions in person with the touch work coaching? I think absolutely. If you're okay with it, Kyle, if you're like, they want to do a hybrid of life coaching, which can be done over Zoom or phone, and then some of the cuddle touch work, why not? What a great thing that they want to do both. I mean, unless I'm missing something, I don't see any reason why you. And when someone asks me something like that, like, hey, would you be willing, could I do this and this? I always take a moment of like, let me think about that. Yes, I'm willing to do that. So again, my answer comes from a place of leadership. Like, yeah, I'm willing to do that. That would work. I'm not just like, yes, of course. Oh my gosh, anything. You want, oh, what? You want to go skydiving while we do our coaching session? Totally. That's totally fine. Absolutely. Oh yeah. No, all good, all good. Or you want to like have 6 cats like singing while we do sessions? Yeah, absolutely. Of course. Nuria, after the enrollment conversation, they say they have to think about it. What is the best way to end? I love that. So Kyle, I think you just say, I'm willing. We can do a hybrid. So Nuria, after the enrollment conversation, they say they have to think about it. How many, if you're watching the show live and you've had people say they have to go think about it, let Nuria know that she's not alone in that, right? Put in the comments, like, yes, I need to go think about it, lots and lots. Because Nuria, that is super common, right? That people say, I need to go think about it. And I will share about the ways you can end a conversation when someone says they're going to go think about it. Give me one moment. So one of the ways when someone says, I'm going to go think about it, you could say, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me, just so I'm clear, what do you want to go think about? Tell me what that looks like. Now, there's a couple thoughts behind that question. It buys you a little bit of time to just be thoughtful, right? Like if someone says, I need to think about this. I say, I want to agree. Thinking about it is good. So we want to agree. That's totally, I think that's a really wise move. Tell me, what are you going to think about? So we have lots of people sharing, right, Nuria? Can you hear that? I've had that happen all the time, often. Super common. So we can ask, tell me what you're going to think about. Now, the reason I sometimes ask that is I want to see if I can get some insight into their thinking, right? Because sometimes people say, well, I need to go talk to my husband. That's really what I have to think about. Oh my gosh, of course, you absolutely should go talk to your husband. Can I ask you a question about that? Yeah, you can ask. Tell me what that looks like. And I ask because, when I've worked with people, sometimes for some people, it's sort of uncomfortable and they're like, well, my husband's the primary breadwinner and he might say no. And I feel like I'm asking permission and that feels horrible because I'm a grown woman and I don't want to be asking my husband permission for something like this. So maybe you're in that situation, or maybe you're just like, no, we just have an agreement. Anything over $1,000, we talk about it. And I go, oh, great. Okay. So when someone says that, I go, excellent. I so acknowledge you for having that kind of clear agreement with your husband. Totally fine if you just want to leave it here. Like we can just leave it. And if you want to reach out to me, that's great. And I have some people who prefer like, no, I'd rather, like, if it would be helpful, we can put a date on the calendar and we can talk if that would be helpful. I've had people say to me, no, I'm good. I'll reach out to you. Let me talk to my husband. And I've had people say, a date would be helpful because it means that I would actually follow through. And I go, great, let's get a date on the calendar. Another thing you can say, Nuria, when someone says, I'm going to go think about it, if you don't, for whatever reason, are like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right at this moment to say, what are you going to think about? I might say, great, absolutely, go think about that. I'm curious, because to me, when someone says, I'm going to go think about it, sometimes that means that we didn't get to something. Like I didn't do my job right. We didn't get to something. So I'm just checking in here. Like, is there anything that we didn't get to? Now, I'm going to pause. I don't love that because I often, at least for me, would send me down the rabbit hole of role reversal. Like, oh, did I do it right? Please tell me, did I mess it up? What did I do wrong? And I don't love that. So I share that as an option cautiously. Now I'll give you what Steve Chandler does. Steve Chandler's like, great, take all the time you need. And that's it. Take all the time you need. Doesn't ask about, well, tell me what you're thinking about. He just is like, absolutely, take all the time you need. That is a super reasonable, valid completion of someone saying, I need to go think about it. Now, some of you are familiar with Rich Litvin's work. For him, I don't know if he still talks like this, but I know for him and many of the coaches he's worked with, to them, that's like a no. And they call it out. They're like, hey, listen, it's all good. If you need to go think about it, that basically says it's a no. Because if it was a yes, you'd be, you'd be like, I'm a yes. So you don't need to be polite. You can just say no. I haven't really done that. It hasn't lined up for me, but that's an option too, and some people that really works for, right? So, Nuria, tell me if those are helpful to you, right? So I want everyone here, because you've all faced it clearly. I need to go think about it is not a death sentence. I know it can feel like that, but it's really not. It's really like someone may be just being polite. And that's something that's people do, right? They're uncomfortable. They don't want to say, I really want to go think about that. They just don't. So they'd rather say, they don't want to say, I'm not ready, or this doesn't feel right. They go, I'm going to go think about it. Now, another thing you can say, when they say, I'm going to go think about it, and you say, well, can I ask you a question? Tell me what you're going to think about. And I might preface it with, the reason I'm asking is because I'm always curious about how people make decisions and what goes into decision making. So that's why I say to someone, and a lot of times people will be like, I just need to spend some time thinking about it. And I say, well, what does that look like? And they're like, well, I need to like look at the pros and cons and I don't know, just kind of that. I'm like, okay, that's totally fine. Like, absolutely, you should go do that. And if there's anything I can do to help, like, and I mean that, because I'm all for you coming up back no. No is better than maybes. Reach out. Eric, I'm looking at your comment. I've had a bunch of I'll think about it turn into yes after a few days. Right, even though I was sure those were no. Sometimes I need to go think about it is important. And I want to be respectful of people's process, right? I don't want to be, so I'm always operating from the place of, if I ask, what are you thinking about? Or how will you be thinking about this? That I'm respectful. I'm not disagreeing. I used to be the queen of like challenging and disagreeing and being like, just that's what I did. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I'd come back to Steve and I'd be like, they said this. And then I said, well, have you thought about this? And maybe you might want to, and he's like, what? Maybe you missed your calling, Carolyn, as a lawyer, because you seem like you're challenging them in some way versus agreeing. When we agree, people relax. They relax, right? We're not, and they also really get, we're not trying to sell them. We're not trying to sell them. So that's the most important thing, right? We're not here to try to sell someone on working with us. So we want to agree. Take all the time you need, right? And I really, please share with me. It's like when you hear this, like to me, one of the most powerful things is like, when I hear Steve talk like that, I think, wow, he is relaxed. He is not trying to get a client at all. At all. So share with me what you think. Share with me if you have questions. I'm, of course, curious. And let's pause for a moment and see what you have to say about this. And then I'm going to talk about something totally different. And what I'm going to say is that one of the things that you can play with about the ask to tell ratio, I want you to start paying attention and thinking about if your ask to tell ratio is low, meaning you're asking a lot, like, wow, I don't feel like at the end of a conversation that I'm leading. I don't feel confident is another way to check out, like, am I asking versus telling? Often when we're not confident, we don't lead, we don't tell. We tend to be tentative and we ask more. So I share that as a way to give you some other ways to start to look at what am I doing, right? And this is where, oh, I love that, Kyle. Kyle just said, when a coach is relaxed and unattached with me, it builds trust. Right. Right. That's great. And that's it, right? That's everything. That trust is what we want. We want someone to feel like, yeah, this person doesn't need me. They're not like groping, like trying to get me. None of that. So that's perfect, Kyle. Thank you for saying that. Okay, here's my next question. Tell me, see, I'm saying tell me when you are in a conversation. Let's play another game. So I asked you your ask to tell ratio in your last two conversations. You can still load that, by the way. you can say, okay, I'm thinking about my last conversation and my ask to tell ratio. Um, or I want to hear from you confidence level on a 1 to 10. 1 being your confidence is low when you're setting up a conversation, executing it, and ending it. 10 being high. My confidence level is high. And let's define confidence as I feel like I know what I'm doing. I feel relaxed. I feel like even whether the person becomes my client or not, I have a sense of how to be in the conversation. And I feel good about that. And I feel like they relax. People tend to relax when they're with me and things happen, right? So let's do a confidence check on a 1 to 10, okay? And let's hear what you all have to say. Because there's a lot to be had there, right? Professional self-confidence is part of leadership. They go together. They go together. So when I was starting, my skills as a leader in the conversation, like I was good at the middle, had a lot of coaching skills because of my USM background, but I was a little less confident in the beginning and the end because I hadn't had as much practice at that. All right, Arza, I love that. 4 to 5 in general. So your job, right, because you're back in the school, is going to be to get that number to an 8 or higher in your professional self-confidence. We all want to be at an 8 or higher. Now that takes practice, that takes time, that takes getting coached, that takes all sorts of things. But we can have intention. So we can be like, my intention is to be at an 8 or higher in my confidence. Erica Riceberg, of course you're a 10. Erica Riceberg has been at this a long time, and she has a lot of confidence and a lot of ease in leading conversations. Erica does a fabulous job, and she has really both pieces, right? She has both the leadership and enrollment piece, which she spent a lot of time getting coached on and is very good at that, and she has deep coaching skills. And both of those lead to greater self-confidence, professional self-confidence. Kyle, 6. Okay. I love above a 5. I'll be curious if you can tell us why wasn't it an 8 or higher? Do you know what made your confidence less than an 8? Let's see if you have an answer to that. Eric, confidence at start and end pretty high, like 8 to 10, but didn't know about tell. Thought it always had to be ask around agreements. Tell requirements. Going to use that. So Eric, one thing I want to caution, because these are things to practice, right? So it'd be easy, this is what we don't want, or I'll be personal. This is what I don't want. I'm imagining people go away from this call. They're like, tell, you're going to do this and you're going to get up and you're going to do 10 push-ups. And after those 10 push-ups, you're going to give me 10 squats and you're going to do it and you're not going to cry about it, right? So we want to, telling can be graceful and it can be a caring act. And I don't imagine you doing this, Eric. You don't have that kind of energy, but I share that so that, we don't all walk away from this call being like, grr. Many people have frankly misinterpreted some of my writing even sometimes, right? Steve Chandler told me recently that we were talking about an enrollment of someone into the coaching school for 2022. And he said to me, I think that she thinks you're like basically, I feel a little bit like, I don't know, it's noon, it's afternoon, I'm not going to curse, but and Steve Chandler does not curse, so this is me cursing, but he was like, I think she thinks you're a ball buster, Carolyn, and that you're going to like have whips in your school and like make people do stuff, and it's going to be really, and we laughed, right, because I'm not like that at all, but I'm strong, and I'm deeply committed to coaches learning how to make money and making money in my school, right? This is not a school where we're going to talk about stuff. We're going to do stuff. We're going to practice. And nothing makes me happier than when a coach's bank account goes up while they're in the school. And then, of course, thereafter, forever. So If you have judgment on leadership, and many people do, often women, but not exclusively, that being a leader means being a ball buster, it means being bossy, it means that I'm mean. I've had people say that to me, that like, not, they haven't told me I'm mean, but that it can feel mean in certain ways when they need to lead in a conversation. That's worth noting and looking at and slowing down and going, what do I need to handle to get those judgments out of leadership? Because women are faced with that so much, which we all know. But men sometimes too can fall into this, I want to be nice. And I don't, telling feels unkind. So think about that. Kyle, I've been having more needy thoughts, feelings about wanting to get a client. I love that you said that. So Kyle, you just introduced us to the next part of the game. So it's so accurate, right? Often when our confidence is lower, it's because we're in needy, like wanting to get a client, maybe feeling a little desperate. I say that because I was really good at being desperate, and I had to really learn how to get that out of the room, because that desperation doesn't tend to go with leadership. Somehow, when you hear about a great leader, you don't go, wow, they reek of desperation. The people that we admire, the people that we look up to, we don't go, oh, they're so desperate and needy. That is inspiring. We don't do that. So you can know that if you're having feelings of neediness or desperation, which is common, then leadership is probably low, and we know confidence is low. So we want to really look at that, right? It's like, well, do I need this person? Even if I need a client, do I need the one sitting right in front of me? And then we want to look at, well, and if I need money, do I need their money? So those are always questions that help me, right? They helped me when I was building my business, and sometimes they even help me now. So let's do the other part of the game. So we did a confidence rating, right? Some of you are playing at home privately, which is just fine. Let's do a neediness desperation rating. I love ratings, if you haven't noticed. Like, rating scales are the bomb. They are helpful to us. You can use these with prospective clients and with clients. So on a 1 to 10, look at your last 2 conversations and go, okay, 1, there was no neediness, barely any neediness or desperation. 10 is like, oh man, I was reeking desperation. Like, if there was a magic deodorant that handled desperation, I need that, right? So give yourself a rating on your last 2 conversations, and then we're going to talk about it. If you want to post them in the comments, that would be great. If you're just doing it at home, that's totally fine too. So these all matter in the context of leadership and enrollment, right? Here's what diminishes leadership: neediness, wanting a client, thinking about ourselves diminishes leadership in this context. So when we're thinking about ourselves, when we're in a conversation about our wants, our needs, what we want to have occur after, then we're not in the context of coaching leadership, right? Really, for most leaders in any context, if we're thinking about ourselves, we're not truly leading. So ask yourself, that'd be another ratio. Them, me. What's your them, me ratio in a conversation? How much am I thinking about them, and how much am I thinking about me and my wants, what I want to have happen for them, right? Them, me is an excellent ratio to play with in your conversations. Because if I'm thinking about me, and I'm like, park it outside the door. That is not going to result in, first of all, that person feeling served. And it's almost never going to result in an enrollment when I'm thinking about me and my wants and my needs. You're all awfully quiet. Maybe I'm here by myself, which is kind of cool. I don't know. I can just talk to me. But I don't really want to. I really want to talk to you and serve you. So if there is an area of leadership and enrollment, we still have about, almost 25 minutes left. We can take another dive into this. Or you might have a question that you're dealing with right now in your coaching business. I'm going to share right now what I'm most excited about. And that is that next week, joining me will be faculty member at the CFJ Coaching Success School and outstanding coach, Devin Mandison, is coming next week. He will be a guest on the CFJ Coaching Success School live Facebook show. So if you have yet to experience Devin Mandison, I am so excited to get to share him with you. He is an outstanding coach. He's been coaching for, I want to say, over 7 years-ish. He has been a faculty member, a guest faculty member at the school since the school launched over 3 years ago, or just 3 years ago. We're heading into our 4th year. He is, one of the things he's really amazing at is creating space for people. He coaches in the corporate world. He coaches individuals. He does some coaching of coaches. He facilitates events. He has written a book called Fatherhood is Leadership, and he has his upcoming Game Changer, which is an event he does twice a year in New York and Los Angeles. His Los Angeles one is coming up. So Devin is going to be here next week. So make sure you mark your calendars, Wednesday at noon Pacific. And let's go to Amrita's question. What do you think of inviting the client after she said that my rates were too high for her to reflect on the investment that could be possible for her in order to work with me for 3 months, and put a date in the calendar for a conversation on this? So let me make sure, Amrita, that I'm understanding your question. So they said your rates were too high. The question I have is, did they say they were too high for the 3 months? Is the 3 month the timeline, and the fee for 3 months was too high? Or are you saying, what number would she pay to do 3 months of work with you? Just help me clarify that, and then I'm going to come back to that. Yep. Lee, I love what Lee just wrote. Lee said, my neediness ratio, 6 to 7. The more conversations decreases neediness. Yes, that is the antidote. So thank you for saying that, Lee. One of the antidotes to neediness is conversations on your calendar, right? Because then we're not getting all narrow about this one and only one person on our calendar. We have plenty of people on our calendar. So that is excellent. So that is excellent. And what I want to say is about that, first of all, that's for everyone we're going to slow down on. The number of conversations on your calendar decreases neediness. So bravo, Lee, for highlighting that. Amrita, yes, they said okay for 3 months, but the rate was too high. That's what I thought. So what I want to say, as I put my cup down and replace it with my coffee cup, is one of the things I want to say about Amrita, the only thing I would offer on that is that there might be a way to do that more rapidly, and let me share. So if someone said to me, your rates are too high, Carolyn, for 3 months, I can't do it. And I really wanted to coach them, right? I was like, I really want to coach this person. I might go back to them and I say, hey, let's talk. And I might email them, let's talk. And I get on the phone and I say, listen, I don't do this very often, but I'm willing to make an exception. How about you send me an email in the next 72 hours and you tell me what fee you would pay for 3 months, and I'll look at it. So 72 hours, you think about it and go, well, what fee what could I pay for 3 months? And you email me and take 72 hours and you go think about it. And you could change the timeline, but I would do it live. So I would say, listen, I'm willing to make an exception. I don't do this very often. How about you think about what you would pay for 3 months of coaching? What fee makes sense for you right now? And you send me that, and I'm willing to look at that. And let's make an agreement about when you're going to get me that information by. So minimum is I want an agreement with them. I don't want it just out there. So Amrita, tell me if that's helpful. And I think in theory, yes, especially when we're newer. So again, like if I want to get some clients and someone says my fee's too high, do I want to consider going back to them and offering them a lower rate? Maybe, especially if I have nothing going on my calendar, right? So there's all sorts of things we can do because our job is to get clients into practice coaching. And lowering one's fees at the beginning is just, it's perfect. That's not even something to spend a lot of time thinking about. It's like, go do it. Especially if the last 3 people have said no, or I'm thinking about it. Last 3 people, you're a new coach and they said no, look at the fees. Claudia, nice to see you. I have a question when enrolling a teenager. Do I also have a conversation with the mom or the dad, the one who will be paying? Yes. I mean, I would. I would absolutely. If I was enrolling a teenager, I would say, so listen, teenager, of which I have one, a 13-year-old, so she's a newer teenager. But if I was enrolling her, I would say, listen, I need to have a conversation with your mom or your dad because am I accurate? You haven't yet earned enough money to pay for this on your own? And they go, no, yeah, my dad. I go, great. So I need to have a conversation with him if this is something you want to do. Now I have some thoughts before you set that up. Are you ready for that? And the teen says, yeah. So I don't want you to have me talk to your mom and dad unless you're really clear you want this. If you want this, then I'm willing to talk to them, but not if it's waffly for you. It's totally fine. If you're like, I'm not sure yet, you want to go away, and totally fine. But if you're clear, you're like, no, Claudia, I want this. Then you are going to go to your parents and say, listen, I really want this. This is important to me. And Claudia, you would say, can you say those words to your parents, right? Because some teams would be like, I'm not telling my parents that this is important to me, right? I'd want to do some coaching around that. And then I'd say, so listen, the coach has requested a conversation with you because they know you're going to make the financial investment, not me. And they want to have a conversation with you because that's important in the process. And then I would say to the teen, and I want you to know if your parents are paying for it, one of the things I want you to be thinking about is what's your skin in the game. If you're not paying, are you going to be able to say to your parents, you can count on me, I will show up on time for every session, I will not miss one, and you can count on me that I'm going to use this like to ... what? To do better at school, to be a better human being to be around. I will growl at you less. I will, right? Claudia, you want to talk with the teen about what can your parents count on you for if they agree to do this? Like, that's what parents love to hear. Parents, like, there needs to be agreements. I'm going to pay for coaching for you. What can I count on you for? But if the kid takes initiative and shares that, I'm writing a check for my kid to do that. Claudia, tell me if that's helpful. Okay. Great. I actually also did this, asked her to send an email. And so she proposed fee that works for her, but not really for me. So we are talking next week and I'm not sure what to do. So that's the downside, right? Are you saying it doesn't work for you because it's too low? And see, if I'm going to give someone the opportunity to come back to me with a proposal, I want to give them my minimum. I don't want to make it open-ended if there's a fee that they could give me that's just too low. Like if I said to someone, look, you write me what you would be willing to pay. And my only thing is it can't be less than $1,000, right? Like I want them to know there's a threshold. Now, if you didn't give that, then like, what are we talking about here? Did they offer to pay you $5? Like just a question, Amrita, to look at. And I hear you. If you counter object at the end of an EC, you're right. So how could we work together? Does that risk role reversal or is that okay? When you say, tell me what I'm saying you're right to. So if you counter objection at the end of an EC, like what's the objection? Is it your fees are ridiculously high? Like give me a little more, Eric, and my request is that this be a real situation versus hypothetical. So I don't love to coach in hypotheticals because they're hypotheticals. Like I want to help you in your business for real right now. So let me know, Eric. Oh, it's too low. And I know she has a lot of work to do. Well, I mean, then it's really simple. When you talk to her, you can say, I would just acknowledge them. Wow, I so acknowledge you for coming back with a fee. It's amazing. And I'm going to let you know, it's too low for me to say yes. Like I just be really direct, Amrita. It's too low for me to say yes. But let me share with you what I would be willing to do. So I would come up with your minimum requirement that you're willing to say yes to. And I hear you. You're like, this person needs a lot of support. It's just too low for me. And that's fine. Then you want to say, so here's the lowest I'm willing to accept. So come up with your bottom line and you'll see what happens. And just tell her, just be direct. Like, I really appreciate you coming back with something. And I'm so sorry. I should have let you know that there's a minimum and that's a little too low for me. And let me tell you what I'm willing to do. So just go back. Claudia, thanks for your answer. In case they say yes, do I send an agreement to everyone? Oh, do you mean if they say yes to the coaching? I wouldn't. I would be talking to the parents saying, I want you to know I'm going to have a clear set of agreements with your teen, and they're going to agree to them, and they're responsible for keeping them. Like that, the parents will not be involved at all once the coaching begins. Like the teen has the responsibility to say yes to the agreements, to keep the agreements. But I would certainly inform the parents, I have a set of agreements that I ask a client to do. They might go, what are they? And you could share them, but I wouldn't require them to look at them, nor would I require them I wouldn't do any of that. Because if the teen's the client, time for them to have the experience of being responsible for that. And again, as a leader, right, we're here to talk about leadership and enrollment. Leadership is saying to the parents, I have agreements. Your teen will be required to keep them. They involve things like always being on time, doing home assignments if we have them, et cetera, et cetera. The only reason I'm telling you is I want you to know I have agreements that I ask of my clients. I'm not asking you to keep the agreements. That's for your teen. So again, now that's telling, right? Eric, I don't see you coming back with the counter objection, so I know you're going to let me know. I'm just going to take a sip here. All right, we have 15 minutes left to talk about leadership. So I've given you a couple of ratios to consider. Ask to tell. The other ratio is, well, there was some ratings, right? There's your professional self-confidence rating. There's your neediness and desperation rating. And I feel like I gave you another ratio that would be interesting, and now it's gone away. Maybe one of you will tell me what it is, but I thought it was really useful that you can play with. You can start to look at asking versus telling. Like, where am I leading and where am I moving into asking at parts of the conversation where it's not useful and it might actually make the person feel like, who's driving the car? Who is steering the ship? Nobody wants a ship captain when it's a critical time and you're docking the ship to be like, here, do you want to do it? Do you want to steer the ship? Like, I don't want to be asked that at a moment that seems like you really need to have skill here to dock the ship. Oh, them me. Thank you, Arza. That's good. I'm going to use that. I hope it's interesting for you. It's good for me. I'm going to use the them me ratio. Right. So that's an important one, right? Them me. And what I love about that is when you're in a conversation, if you all of a sudden are like, are they going to want to, I really want to coach them and I really want them to work with me. You can go, oh, that's me. Get back into them. Get back into them. So them me ratio you can play with. Ask to tell ratio you can play with. Your neediness and desperation rating. Your confidence rating, right? So if your confidence generally right now in your leadership is a 5, you want to be like, how am I getting that up to an 8? How am I getting it to 8 and above? If your ask to tell ratio, if you're asking a lot at the ends of conversations or at the beginning, or there's a question mark at the end of every sentence that you use throughout an entire conversation, you want to look at that. You want to look at that. I think ratio is going to be my new favorite word. Like I'm going to try to come up with ratios for everything now. I was so pleased about the ask to tell that the alchemy work does. I'm like, ooh, what else can I use? So I'm glad to hear that the them me ratio is helpful. Zainab, I'm glad. I hope and I don't know if I said your name accurately, so maybe you'll phonetically spell it for me so I get it accurate. Okay, so we have we have 12 minutes left. I can take a couple of questions about a situation you're in, and then I'm also going to talk a little bit more about growing yourself as a leader in this work. So one of the things I say often to the profession, in the profession, is that this is a relatively new profession, right? So it may not seem that way to you. I've been in it a while, but it's still relatively new. So one of our jobs as individuals and as a community is to professionalize the profession, right? So when we go to a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist, we're not concerned about will they be professional. We're not. Now they may not be, and then we don't use them, but we're not like questioning that. We're not like, ooh, I hope this lawyer behaves like a professional. That's not a question that comes to mind, right? Because we already have, the profession already has an identity. And yes, there's other lanes, right? There's the slimy car chasing lawyer, right? We know that. But by and large, right, when someone says, I'm a lawyer, we immediately go, ooh, you're a lawyer. No, they went to law school. They know stuff. They're 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 professional, right? We assume that because of the profession. When people hear the word coach, there's a lot of different things that come up, right? Because TV shows have made fun of life coaching, and there's like, so we know, right? The profession is still finding itself. And that's part of the reason I often in my communications talk about professional coaching. I don't just say coaching, right? One would think we don't need that. We don't go professional lawyer. I'm a professional lawyer. Well, we don't. However, because the profession of coaching is new, I often add, I'm a professional coach, because I want to start creating that for the person standing in front of me. And I'm also doing that for the profession, right? So leadership in professional coaching, leadership in enrollment for professional coaches, right? So one of our jobs as individuals when we go out into the world and in every conversation we have is we are adding to the sum total of professionalism in this profession. So the more we grow our leadership, the more we really step up in that, and we're not waffling around, and we're not hesitant, and we're not, like seeming like we don't know what the heck we're doing. We are strengthening the profession. And that you can feel really good about, because it's not just for you, it's for the entire profession. There are coaches coming behind you that are new. They're even newer than you. They're even more needy than you and less confident than you. But every time we help create this profession, it changes in the world, right? So when you're meeting someone or having conversations, they're forming an impression of this profession. So just remember that, whether you're meeting people at the grocery store or you're at an event where you're sharing about yourself a little bit before you get very curious about them. Remember, like, we all are with each other in this, right? And so there's an opportunity for all of us to take a stand for the profession. Amrita, I have a neck shoulder pain that appears each time I lean in too much and lose my center. That's when the them-me ratio is off and the neediness desperation ratio is high. That's a great indicator that you get neck and shoulder pain. What a great feedback mechanism, Amrita. I love that. So there you go. And there's probably other feedback mechanisms that each of you have, right? Usually if I'm in any kind of neediness or desperation, I feel yucky. I don't feel, I feel a little slimy. I feel small, and, I might not be sweating, but I feel sweaty, even if I'm not actually sweating. So that might be helpful, right? It's like, get to know, like Amrita knows, she has her own cue, right? You want to get to know your cues for when those behaviors or those like things are showing up in your conversations. So one thing to think about as we're heading towards the finish of this is to think about, who do you want to be in this profession? So in other words, if you know now, right, you can't unknow it. I just said it. We each are creating this profession to the world when people meet us and when people interact with us. It's like, who am I being? as a leader in this profession of coaching, and who do I want to be? And that every time you interact with someone, especially someone brand new, we're contributing to the overall perception of this profession. And am I contributing it in a way that I feel good about, or am I contributing it to in a way that creates, more jokes and misunderstanding in the world about this profession, right? Like, to me, it's the greatest profession on the planet, as Steve Chandler says, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. And there's a reason that there's jokes about life coaching on television, because when this profession, many of us don't have a clear sense of how to be in this profession. So people think, what, people pay you to be their friend, right? People pay you? And that's not accurate, right? Coaching is not friendship plus, it's not therapy light, and how we show up in the world creates that. So give that some thought for yourself of who do you want to be in this profession. Now, I'm not saying you have to be all buttoned up and like wear a suit, and that's not a requirement, certainly not anymore in the world, COVID times, right? But it's really like, it doesn't mean that you're uptight or you're whatever. Like, you can be a professional and, wear a t-shirt, frankly. I might not recommend it if you're going to be meeting with someone live for a conversation. I'm a fan of, looking the part to some extent, not a suit and tie, but maybe a collared shirt doesn't hurt. So that's if you're a man or a woman, right? Like I like to look the part because it helps me in my leadership, right? If I'd shown up for this call in the workout gear I had on earlier and I was sort of sweaty and messy, I mean, you'd all laugh and you'd be forgiving, but I wouldn't feel the part as much, right? And there's something to be said for that. So our language matters as leaders. Who are we being as leaders? Our language creates our world. So give that some thought. If you're using words like sorta, kinda, maybe, try, what do you think, lots of asking, that's not contributing to how you're being seen as a leader. And it's also not contributing to how others are viewing our profession. T-shirt with a sport coat. That's cool. I love that, right? That works, Mark. There you go. I mean, right, clothing, matters, but it's not as important as what's happening inside of the clothing, right? I have met wildly professional people who are dressed relatively casually, and immediately, based on how they were being, the clothing didn't matter to me. So I'm not here to say you have to wear, like, I'm not that, right? Like, we get to be who we are. And this is a profession. So think about that. No one says, I'm a professional doctor, I'm a professional lawyer, I'm a professional dentist, because those professions have already been established. We, you, me, everybody on this call is establishing the profession of coaching every time we step out into the world, every time we have a conversation. And when we're in that, it matters to the person who's sitting with us. Like, I feel better when I'm with someone who really takes up the space as a professional. And that doesn't mean they're warm and they're loving and they're kind. And I'm like, wow, they know what they're doing. And I feel good about that. The other thing I will leave you with is this. We'll be back next week, the final in the 3 episodes of the CFJ Coaching Success School show. We're going to complete it with Mr. Devin Mandison. He will be here with me for 90 minutes talking about leadership. And he has some amazing things to say about leadership in this profession, leadership as we serve others, leadership as we serve others in their transformation. So I acknowledge you. I acknowledge you for participating today. I acknowledge you for saying you want to grow in your leadership. It matters. Well done, everybody. See you soon.